Just as the gladiators lived in the ludus, football players live in the locker room. Now, there are many different types of gladiators. We're going to talk about the different types of football players. Right now, the kickers. The kickers have a more exposed face mask so that they can see the ball when their foot makes contact with it. This is similar to the different types of visors. And the pads are generally smaller than the other players because the contact is less.
Seen here is a picture of a retiarius. A retiarius would wear the lightest amount of pads, or in this case armor, much like a kicker in football. Retiarius were also considered the lowest standing of gladiators, and to many, kickers are the lowest standing amongst football players.
Linemen, the biggest and strongest guys on the team. Now, if you look at the differences in face masks, they have a lot more covered because they get a lot more contact. They're down there in the trenches. And the shoulder pads are a lot bigger because these guys get the most contact, and they get contact immediately. Now, if you compare these to those of a kicker, you notice you wouldn't have a lineman matched up against a kicker. It wouldn't be good. There are differences in size, speed, and strength. Players also wear knee braces to protect them from injuries such as ACL and MCL tears. They don't have to worry about swords coming at them, but they do have to worry about falling at weird angles and ending their career with a terrible injury.
Seen here is an image of a provocator. Provocators were the most heavily armored of the gladiator types. With their large shield and breastplate, provocators were the most protected of the gladiators, and that is why they only fought other provocators. Such armor would come as an unfair advantage against other gladiator types. This is similar to football because linemen only face other linemen on the field.
Big skill players are in between the line and the kickers, and the big skill players, we have more of our faces covered, so you can see here, because you need a little more visibility because you have more time running down the field. And the pads are somewhere in between. Lighter so that we can move faster, but big enough to protect us from large hits.
Pictured here is a Thracian. While lacking the large shield and chest plate possessed by a provocator, Thracians did have a high level of defense. They also had a slightly better level of visibility. This is similar to big skill players in football because they do have good protection in their pads like linemen. However, their pads are slightly smaller and they do have better visibility with their smaller face masks.
The skill players spend the most time running down the field, and as such they have a slightly smaller face mask than the big skill, and they have a visor to protect their eyes for when they're jumping up and trying to catch the ball. The pads look like a hybrid between a big skill and a kicker pad because they have to be small and light enough for them to really move and get a full range of mobility, but at the same time they need to be protected from some of the biggest hits.
The gladiator version of a skilled player is the Hoplomachus, and while still being protected by a small shield, the Hoplomachus lacks the greater protection possessed by a Thracian or provocator. That being said, the Hoplomachus does have better vision, speed, and mobility, much like a skilled player in football.
The ankle braces are fairly common for all football players. As you're moving around a lot and you can be knocked down, an ankle injury is a very typical injury. So one thing you want to avoid is getting knocked out with a high ankle sprain. And ankle braces, worn by everyone on the team, except for kickers, prevent that.
Just like football players wore ankle braces to prevent unnecessary ankle injuries, almost all gladiators wore frontal leg pads to prevent unnecessary lower leg injuries. Ancient Roman physician Galen studied gladiators at his many trips to the ludus, and he claimed that they fatigue themselves to the limit, and that while athletes pursue their profession, their body remains in this dangerous state of hyperdevelopment. Galen's main point in his writings is that the gladiators lacked an important asset to their fitness, which is balance. However, Modern Stanford strength coach Shannon Turley stresses balance in his training of Stanford football athletes.
What do you feel is the importance of muscular balance in training football players?
Muscular balance is essential because as a football player, practice is repetitious, overuse, skill development. And guys can become very one-sided. So specifically, if you've got a right tackle, okay, he's always going to post and push off of his left leg and accept force onto his right leg. So he can become very tight in his right hip and strong on his left side. So those muscular imbalances are essential that you balance. So essentially, the best thing for him is to go play some left tackle. But he's not going to do that because he's a right tackle. Similarly, you can have a cornerback. He always plays on the left side of the defense. And then that means he's always going to open up and drive back to the inside or to his right because the sideline is to his left. And these movement patterns become very repeated each day in practice and throughout the year since you're constantly training for the game. And so therefore, it's our job to try to balance that, whether it be strength-wise, to strengthen the weaker side that's getting less strength work, or to improve flexibility and restore mobility on the side that is strong and obviously is going to become stiff. So again, the right tackle example, the right side of his hip is going to get very tight because it's also very strong, having to accept all of the force. So we have to do a lot of mobility, flexibility, and strength training to work around those trained deficiencies.
Modern football training stresses balance. In each of the next clips, you will notice that each movement is paired with a counter movement that stresses the muscles surrounding the muscles being shown in the first movement. These counter movements activate the muscles surrounding the primary muscle featured in the first movement, therefore not allowing that muscle to become too strong in regards to the surrounding muscles that stabilize it. While many movements feature counter movements, other exercises, such as pull-ups, shown here, require stretching to loosen the muscles that are being activated during exercise.
We kind of pride ourselves on recovery and taking a proactive approach. We don't want, if someone is in pain and on a scale of 1 to 10, that's a 3 or 4 out of 10, we like to implement a treatment strategy, whether it be therapeutic modalities, manual therapy skills, rehab exercises, so that 3 or 4 doesn't escalate to an 8 or 9. We pride ourselves on, we don't like surprises. If something is bothering them or something's barking at them, we like the athlete to get in right away so that we can take care of it before it starts to limit or inhibit their playing time, be it practice, games, weight room, conditioning, strength and conditioning. So, yeah, we pride ourselves on almost preventing that significant injury from happening.
While ancient Roman recovery and training techniques are in no way what they are today, ancient Roman gladiatorial schools did employ unctors who used oil to massage the gladiators after a workout. Gladiators were also encouraged to consume large amounts of carbohydrates, fatty foods, and proteins. Just like football players on scholarship, gladiators, for their gladiator schools, were extremely valuable assets. Thus, their health was of the utmost importance. Almost all modern football stadiums are modeled after the same basic Coliseum-style arena. Just like modern stadiums have on-site locker rooms and training rooms, so too did the Coliseum. It had on-site training rooms, and additionally, it had secret doors and traps from which animals could be placed directly onto the field of combat. Just as modern stadiums have a press box from which high-ranking officials can sit, the ancient Colosseum had the emperor's box, which held whoever was holding the game or the emperor. The original Colosseum is said to hold between 50 and 87,000 spectators, a number that is equivalent to a modern football stadium. In ancient Roman games, fandom was predominantly preserved for individual gladiators, not gladiatorial schools. In modern football, specific players do have a specific fan base, but that being said, most fans are loyal to a specific team rather than an individual player.